Well, good evening, everybody. I'd like to welcome you all to the special meeting, which is April 23rd at
What time is it?
Yeah.
What time is it? What time is it? Is there a salami? Yeah. How long you been like that?
Great conversation. You can spot right away. We just moved here.
Is there a tsunami? Quick! Run to the hills. People climbing up on their roofs. Well, you're the fastest thing to do the roof, wouldn't it?
Add that to the agenda on the next Tuesday meeting.
I think it's done. I would like to call to order a special meeting on Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024. Everybody please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the roll call. Alan Pointer, here. Rob Ward, here. Adam Mann, here. Nikki, here. Tom,
Here.
and I should say the full name. Nikki Wood, Tom Bryan. Someone, Miller, I'm sorry. And Jim Carlisle.
Present.
All right, Mark Crouch, present. Very good. Before I start in on the agenda, I'd like to go over a few things. I'm announcing a change to the procedure to improve our meetings. One of the things I noticed in last meeting, we were having a lot of second and third motions, and it was getting kind of clunky. So what we're doing is when we close debate, any member may close debate by requesting a close of debate. Simply say, I'd like to close debate. And at that point, if 50% of the members say yes, the debate is closed. And we don't have to go through a first and a second motion. So that's that. There seems to be a little confusion about the agenda here. Should be noted the current agenda does not have a section for public comments, as it was stated in the public agenda, despite other communications to the contrary. So I understand that people might want to talk, but you know, for the first two items, maybe we should not talk. For code enforcement, though, it's the most important concern of the council right now. It needs the full commitment of the citizens of Lakeside. A concern was expressed to me this morning in regards to people needed input at this stage of the process for code enforcement. So what I'd rather err on the side of citizens' involvement instead of just saying, well, this is the strict rule, this is what we're going with. If the council agrees, there will be a brief comment period at the start of agenda item 8. Individuals may only talk about code enforcement for 2 minutes. Public comments will end after 20 minutes. Does the council agree to this change? And just raise your hand and say yes or no. Yes. Good, okay. So that's changed to the agenda on item number 8. All right. So as we know, in the last meeting, we tabled the item for the Lakeside Business Association for funding of 2024 special events. So we're bringing that up again. I open up discussion on that. I recognize Adam Hannon.
As I mentioned in the last meeting, being the former president of LBO, I feel like at this time I should step out of the room, and I wish you guys luck.
Thank you, Mr. Hannon. And as everybody can see, there's been changes throughout the last week in regards to the resolution. And I would like Mr. Hollenbach to give a staff report in regards to that. And then when you finish that, go ahead and read the resolution.
As you are aware, the council tabled this business item. And the motion was to table it to await a legal counsel opinion as to what the council's options were. Since then, we have received the legal counsel opinion, and not so much of an opinion as it was sort of a historic pursuit of what our limitations were as a council as it relates to the expenditure of the transit tax funds. Essentially, while the math is a little bit confusing, there is no reason why the council could not continue with the discussion from their last council meeting and moving forward, if they so desire, in supporting financially using the transit tax for the special events. In a nutshell, where we are at is that the city had a transit tax prior to the state putting limitations on how that money could be spent prior to 2004. The city had a transit tax already of 6%. State did a state mandate, 2003, 2004, and changed the rules of how we can spend the money. But really what it was about was how we track the money. Since then, the city has gone from a 6% transit tax to a 7.5%. The 1.5%, the difference, has different tracking rules and different limitations on how we can expend those funds. But the majority of our transit tax funds, the 6%, is a council decision as to how they deem appropriate to spend the transit tax funds that receive. So a vast majority, 6% versus the 1.5%, there is the ability for the council to expend transit tax funds based upon the legal opinion for the desired interest in partnering and supporting the Lakeside Business Owners Association. So the okay is there from legal counsel. Questions from council as it relates to where we're at so far? Okay. Or corrections? This resolution tonight, which are about 20 copies of on the table when the meeting started. Well, 19, because I took one. But we changed 4 words in the resolution from a previous council meeting. And I'll explain them. I'll explain the 4 words once I get there. So reading the resolution in its entirety as staff is recommending to the council. Resolution 2024-01. It's our first resolution of the year. A resolution of the mayor and Lakeside City Council to authorize expenditure of funds requested by the Lakeside Business Owners Association in supporting special events to promote the city of Lakeside and business activities from funds received through the state authorized transient lodging tax. Whereas the City Council of Lakeside receives transient lodging tax, often referred to as TLT, revenue from lodging businesses within the city of Lakeside. And whereas the state authorized program requires a limited portion of these funds to be expended for local promotion and marketing. And whereas the city budgets and funds tens of thousands of dollars from TLT revenues for the promoting of Lakeside on an annual basis with the acquisition of significant fireworks. And whereas funds above and beyond the required expenditures by the state are available for city expenditures as deemed appropriate by the City of Lakeside budget process and by the City Council designation and action. And whereas the City of Lakeside City Council would like to support the local economy through special tourist promotion events sponsored and led by various organizations, including but not limited to business organizations and nonprofits within the community. And whereas the Experience Lakeside 2024, the July 4th celebration, the Lakeside Vintage Festival 2024, and the Million Lights of Lakeside 2024 are tourist promotion events supported by the Lakeside Business Owners Association. That is the line that got changed, because when the Lakeside Business Owners Association came and made the presentation requesting funds, the understanding, perhaps erroneously on my part, was that it was 4 events that they were sponsoring. Well, really, what the 4 events we're talking about here are 2 events that are sponsored by Lakeside Business Association, 1 event that's sponsored by the city, 4th of July, and 1 event which was sponsored by 2 business organizations within our community. So the Lakeside Business, this request from them is really about supporting 4 events, not sponsoring 4 events. So the modification that's in this edition from last week's edition is the word supported rather than sponsored. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the City Council of the City of Lakeside, Oregon, as follows. Authorize the expenditure of $4,380 of TLT funds for the Experience Lakeside 2024 event to the Lakeside Business Owners Association upon receipt of complete budget for this event. And 2, authorize the expenditure of $1,700 of TLT funds for the 4th of July 2024 event to the Lakeside Business Owners Association upon receipt of a complete budget of this event and finance report from the Experience Lakeside previous event, 2024 event. And 3, authorize the expenditure of $1,700 of TLT funds for the Lakeside Vintage Festival 2024 event to the Lakeside Business Owners Association upon receipt of a complete budget of this event and finance report from the 4th of July event. And 4, authorize the expenditure of $2,160 of TLT funds for the Million Lights of Lakeside 2024 event to the Lakeside Owners Business Association upon receipt of a complete budget of this event and finance report from the Lakeside Vintage Festival 2024 event with an agreement of receiving a finance report for the Million Lights of Lakeside event within 30 days of the event. That is the resolution that is now before the council in authorizing the funding. Now, really, this was both a corrective action as well as a compromise. While it is TLT funds, There are still funds within the city budget. The city still gets audited every year. We can't just spend money. Not even if we had it to spend, which we don't. So this is a staff created proposal resolution, which I believe speaks to the council and their desire to partnership with the Lakeside Business Owners Association and filling the voids to make events special within our community. And it covers our coverage, for lack of polite words, that meets the standards that we are held as a public entity in the expenditure of public funds. This is the resolution as I have amended. Again, the 4 words changed, all had to do with the difference between supporting and sponsoring.
And that's resolution 2024-0. Do any of the councilors have a question for Mr. Holmbaum? No.
You covered it.
Okay, would a council like to make a motion?
I move that we adopt resolution 2024-01 to support the events listed in the resolution.
I'll second it.
Okay. Would any of the councilors like to be recognized at this point in time? It's a tie.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to.
Go ahead now.
This is for 2024, next year will be, we'll review this again. If they post it.
These are events, these are the events throughout the year.
For this year, for 2024.
The last event is in 2024, yes. Yeah. Mr. Ward?
I had a question along the same lines, which is, I don't know about the procedural details in terms of, can we allocate money today out of next year's budget? Because it looks like a couple of these events are in the next fiscal year. I don't know if we can do that.
Well, the budget will reflect a total amount of money for special events, which won't specify which events they are for. There's, I believe, 20,000 in the in the line item for special events. I'd have to.
I think it's 15.
Huh?
It might be 15.
Okay.
Either way.
Event expense 20,000. There's 20,000 in next year's proposed budget, which has not been released yet. But it doesn't specify what the money is expended for. Did I answer your question, sir? Close enough? Thank you.
Any other councilor to be recognized at this point in time? Okay, I'll recognize myself. There was a huge crunch on time for this proposal, and I do realize that it seems a little rushed, but we haven't had council for 4 months, and that's the reason for it. A lot of this will be taking on faith, but I think, you know, and I'll tell you right now, I've gone back and forth on this thing time and time again, but I think at this point, it's really probably the best move to make if we want to, you know, keep a little bit of consistency in the city. Would anybody like to close discussion, or shall we continue?
somebody. I will.
All in favor, just raise your hand. Okay. Discussion is closed. I move, Alan, I move that we go ahead. Can you make the motion on the,
We already,
repeat the motion again?
I move that we adopt resolution 2024-01, a resolution to support the events listed in the resolution.
Okay, so that's the statement of the resolution. Now we'll vote on it. Everybody in favor, say aye, and
Aye.
raise your hand.
Aye.
Everybody opposed to the resolution, raise your hand and say no. Resolution is adopted. Yeah,
so long, let Adam back in the room.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, put Adam back in.
the next order of business is developing a criterion and a criteria and an evaluation review to be used to review the performance of the city manager. Now, I know we all got this packet of a lot of different samples and everything like that, so at this point in this discussion, does anybody have any questions about any of the samples, any of the literature that we received on this? Any questions about the city recorder manager job description and whether it matches up to any of these? I recognize Nikki Wood.
Okay, I was wondering, if along with the evaluation, would be a copy of the city manager's job description to,
Yeah, I think, yeah.
Yeah. okay,
So, yes, that would be important. Okay. Other questions about this? One of the things is we have a lot of descriptions here. From my experience, and this is probably be moving forward, not this time around, because we're underneath a tight deadline to evaluate Mr. Holmbaum. Couple weeks. And but one of the things that I'd like to see in the future is not just have the basic evaluations, but also weight the basic evaluation against goals. And that would be something in the future, but I think for now, maybe we should stick with just an evaluation that we like and we would want to modify here. That's just my feeling on it. Okay. Would somebody like to talk about the different? Let's go this route. Does anybody have a preference of evaluation forms there? Mr. Ward?
Actually, I'd like to suggest that before we start deciding on a form or a particular process, that we consider what it is we hope to get out of this. And the benefits of doing an evaluation like this is not only do you identify things that the person being evaluated has done really well or potentially needs to do improvement, you also get information on how the council can improve in communicating its goals and intentions to the city manager, and also in terms of being informed by the city manager. Like, for example, if you're going through evaluation criteria and you just have no basis for evaluating them, that's potentially an area where the council needs to be more inquisitive. Also, if it was a high quality evaluation for those kinds of purposes, you'd also want to have the person do a self-evaluation that coordinates with that. You might want to have staff do upward evaluations, because managing staff and helping them with morale is an important part of the position. those are the kind of things you might want to do for a really good beneficial evaluation. On the other hand, some of us have just been here a short time. The ones who've been here longer haven't really worked with Rick that much. And we're also in the middle of, we're about to start the budget process. So by any criteria, this is a bad time to do this evaluation. And the only reason we're doing it now is because it's in his contract that it happens in May. So we have to decide if we want to put in the time and effort to try to do a high quality evaluation now, or if we want to instead do something that's more performative and simpler.
That's a good question. Is there a way to do something that we would probably want to be considering in the future to do a quality evaluation that we use at this time, but make sure that if you don't know the answer on that evaluation, you mark it in A. You know, if you can't fairly evaluate, you might be returning an evaluation with 2 or 3 items that you can really check it on, because I myself envision pretty much through all of these, and I probably worked with Rick more than anybody else. I can't fairly evaluate. But like Rob says, you know, this is something that we need to do. It's in his contract. So, I mean, how does everybody feel about that? Does anybody want to, Adam?
I think it's clear that we need to act on this very quickly. And I support what Rob was saying, and I think what you're saying is we need to come up with something fairly simple that we can accomplish pretty quickly. And know that going forward, we want to develop something a little more intensive. So like, it was great, you know, to dig through the 100 pages of examples, but I don't know that we really need to address that today in that kind of depth.
So are we thinking about not, oh, I'm sorry, Jim?
What I was thinking about is the people that actually work with Rick. I don't know a lot about how it works here in City Hall, but if we can get some opinions from the individuals that actually work with Rick day in and day out, I think would help the situation.
And that portion of the evaluation is only about timeline.
Yes, yes.
So,
I mean, I think that we could put together an evaluation for this time and as we talked about, kind of expand on that for the next time with some goals probably set in place, or, you know, but I don't think it would be unfair, I think, to all of us to try and do a detailed evaluation at this time, you know, with the little time that we have to try and put something together that would be fair to both parties. Yeah.
Well, that's all we're talking about in our work session. Basic evaluations. I mean, this sounds good, but you're just things we do, just as we know for sure. Develop one. And then a new list of requirements and duties, and next time we evaluate, you can see them all.
so from this point, what is our next step in creating this evaluation?
Mayor,
Yes.
so is the one that was on the top of our packet, the very first one, this is what they have, the most recent one that the city of Lakeside has used in 2022.
I believe so.
Yes. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with the current one. I think maybe going forward, we could probably add the goals in there, but I think this would almost be basic enough for the current situation.
Yeah, I would agree, with the caveat that an opinion, but it's a good opinion.
Yeah, and I kind of go along with what Alan is saying in the fact that we have to be really careful about evaluating that. If we don't know for a fact that that's the case, you know, just mark it in A. I mean, if evidently the manager collects all the evaluations and tabulates. If somebody fills out an evaluation which has all NAs, so be it at this point. We only want to evaluate on what we know.
Tom, do you remember how we calculated these amounts time? We used the system evaluation. Did the city manager calculate them, or was that the mayor or the council? I don't remember what we did.
I can't say for sure either.
I was just looking at the 2022 where it said that the members.
Yeah.
Or we could have a third party. I don't think you'd want the city manager to do it.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah, that doesn't make.
I trust you, Rick, but.
yeah.
Weren't you actually?
I feel like we should be able to trust the mayor to add that up for us. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see a problem there.
How's your math feel?
I have a calculator.
That works.
Yeah, and I know how to use Excel.
Okay.
All right, good. So. Any more discussion on this?
And so whatever we do come up with, I believe under the terms of the contract, that Rick has to agree to it as well.
That's correct.
I believe you're right.
So. We do it in a motion and you also approve the motion, or do you just say, I'm good with it? How do we do that?
I think you can just reach a consensus that you're going to use that particular form, set a date for it to turn it in, and I'm fine with it.
Okay. So. I think we don't have to make a motion, just get consensus. First off, before we go there though, we need to figure out when these evaluations are, well, we all have the evaluation here, so everybody's got it.
Right.
You can return them to me, send it, everybody knows how to photocopy it or take a picture of it and put it in an email and send it to me.
Mhm.
That would work. We all have the knowledge, right? Okay. Just checking because my parents didn't, so. Why don't we do that? And when is the deadline that we would need for this? Because we would need it for the next meeting, right? Which is the 9th.
It's on the agenda for May 9th.
So I would want them back by May. Right time, May 4th. Okay,
And we are using the first.
right. So I believe there's a consensus, and let's just take a vote on it so we all understand. There's a form in here that says City of Lakeside Performance Evaluation, City Manager 2022. Does everybody see that form?
Yeah.
And is everybody good with this one?
Yes.
And everybody understands the whole issue about not marking something that you don't know about. Okay? We'll just do a simple vote. All in favor, say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
All not in favor, say no. All right, great. So I'll expect them all by May 4th. You have the email address. Even if you're not used to it, even if you don't have a scanner, just take a picture of each page. Good, very good. All right, so moving along. We are now going to discuss the changes to the present code enforcement ordinances. And this is where we made the change because we do want people comments. you can have 2 minutes to comment. And after you finish commenting, go up to the speaker podium, mention your name and just the city that you reside in. And if you could, write on a piece of paper and give Rick that name when you're done talking. I know we normally hand out the form first, but in this case, we weren't sure whether we would actually open up public comments or not. So with that, is there anybody who would like to, and by the way, this is our first kickoff meeting for code enforcement. I have asked the city manager to ensure that every meeting we have until this thing is done, that will be on the agenda. As everybody mentioned in the last meeting, we are committed to getting a code enforcement process going and having it work. So I think everybody's in agreement with that. And I just want everybody to know it. And that's part of the reason why I want to open up comments tonight, because even though we're going to just be doing the basic, kind of understanding where we're going at, I always want to have input in regards to code enforcement. So we can do what is right for the citizen. All right, enough of my talking. Would anybody like to make public comments?
Good evening, councilors, everybody in the room. I'm Aaron Griffith. I live right up the road at 160 North 8. My biggest thing that I hope for as you all embark on the huge challenge of code enforcement here is that it's simple, addresses the issues at hand, and leaves enough for people to live. We have a problem on house here in the community. We know that. We have a problem with night crawlers. We have certain issues with parking. We have a few other issues, that I'm sure are going to come up throughout the course of the discussion. My urging and my hope is that it's dealt with in a thoughtful and effective manner, but keep it simple, the KISS principle. I think too many small towns get bogged down in minutia and trying to micromanage, grassland. That's ridiculous. I don't think any of you are that unreasonable, but we didn't think so at another place I lived, and that's exactly what happened. So keep it simple. I have full confidence and faith in you guys, and I appreciate you letting me speak, including the community. I mean, everybody has their own concerns. I'm really encouraged that you're wanting to hear us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would somebody else like to speak at fine time?
Well, Lakeside resident, thank you guys for getting this ball rolling again. And I would hope that you guys might consider a camping ordinance in conjunction with this code enforcement. I feel like the illegal camping, according to the camping ordinance we have now regarding our commercial zone, isn't addressed in the packet for today. I feel like being the only city in the county that hasn't adopted a camping ordinance is doing nothing but detrimenting our city. Have drafts available and have been given out to previous councils and previous staff, and again, the current council and current staff of the camping ordinance that's used by Powers, North Bend, and Coos Bay. And I pray that we can see that too. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close public comments. Now we can go ahead and get started on this. Before we actually get into the meat of everything, I want to, and with council approval, I want to mention our livability committee. I actually stole the name of this committee from Coos Bay. What it is the Code Enforcement Committee, but I think it has a nicer ring to it and it
Yeah,
gets
those are
more
good
meat of it. I'm looking for 2 counselors and 5 citizens for this committee. And you can see up there, this is the scope that I was looking at. It's to educate the citizens on the city ordinances and the need for compliance. And this would be however we educate is however we educate. This is up to the committee. Conduct a survey of past and current city complaints to determine the best practices to improve compliance with the city ordinances. Assist the city staff in identifying problem properties for enforcement. Working with the city and staff council, create a plan to improve code compliance within the city. Monitor the city's efforts to improve code compliance and suggest changes to the plan. Report monthly to the city council on the status of the city's efforts to improve code compliance. And I just had a footnote there about when we're talking about assisting city staff and that type of thing, that all legal issues need to go through Rick because we don't want to blow our budget up, with the lawyer and that type of thing. This committee is in conjunction with the efforts that the council is doing right now in determining, what we're doing for fixing the code. One of the ways to look at it is you need a code that works, and then you need to have a plan to execute off it. So they're actually going to be in combination. The livability committee is very foreseeable. Well, it will at least last a year and maybe more permanent than that because of the fact that we as a city have a long ways to go to get everything corrected. So, and these type of things just don't happen overnight. All right, and then of course we have the policy approach. This is right out of the council manual. Identify the problems and needs, establish community goals, determine objectives, and develop and analyze different opportunities, establish priorities, develop programs, implement programs, monitor and evaluate programs, and obtain feedback. A lot of the ones past like 6, 7, and 8 are kind of more of something that the committee will actually be more involved with. With that, I'm pretty much ready to start discussing as far as identifying problems and needs.
Mayor?
Yes.
Well, I have a few questions about the ordinance. May I ask those now?
Sure.
Yes. So for the enforcing officer, Rick,
I'm sorry?
for the enforcing officer that you would like to use, do you have one in mind?
No.
So if I may just interject really quickly, one of the things that we're doing tonight is building a huge list for Rick of all the questions. So he can get the answers for us and we can proceed. So the first question would be. You got the first question then, if you had?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I think it's important to find out too, like costs associated.
So what about the needs? Identifying the problems and the needs. What are our problems? Just everybody can start. Just randomly start.
Burned down house on Jacobson.
So burn down houses, okay? That would be one of the pieces that we expect this code to fix or to be able to act upon.
Touching upon Shirley's issue with the camping on the streets, the living in the streets.
That's a little, it's not really necessarily code compliance because of the,
Parking in the
yeah,
lane and going to the bathroom on the sidewalks. is
Yeah.
Part of that, right?
it is and it isn't. You can't move somebody at, maybe at night, that type of thing. You have to provide a place for them. So do we want to broaden the scope on that?
Well, I think,
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it was something that we started working on with Melissa, and she's ordered this big map about what properties we had available to put those people on or give them space. I mean, we had started some of the work on it. It could definitely be something that the livability committee could work on as well, or it's just something that kind of goes along with the problems in the community.
I would be concerned about expanding the scope. Is, because that's another big issue. I don't know how anybody else feels about it.
When it comes to code enforcement, we're also talking about safety.
Yep.
And people urinating on the street out of cars,
That's part of our.
definitely safety.
So I guess it is going to be included to a certain extent. It's just the piece of ordinance for that will get a little tricky.
I think in talking with the community, they use the word code enforcement pretty liberally, and going into those conversations, what you find out from them is the issues that we're talking about people spending too much time in places they shouldn't, is what they're really addressing. That's what they, you know what I mean? They might not give it the right title, so we have to be careful to not eliminate that, because that's what a lot of the community means when they say code
Yeah.
enforcement.
So-
But I understand your point is that we have to be really careful and make sure that we're not doing things there that step on other issues. But we can address things at the most basic level, maybe.
So if you read the code enforcement, it does talk about those issues. It's just how we address it. So it does fit in. So we've got safety issues, issues of, what do you call that?
Nuisance, noise.
Yeah, noise. But how would you classify the issue that you were just talking about?
Noise or nuisance.
But the homeless issue.
Oh.
For example, we can go into the code book for abatement and say, hey, these guys are not parking in the parking lanes. Right? You can also go there and say that there's a toxic mess here.
Yeah.
And therefore that's safety, and you can go into the code book in regards to that. Now, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, where it gets tricky is you can't really, I guess, move them. And we can discuss that when we get into it further.
I think there are some state guidelines
Yeah.
now as far as moving people,
Right.
which we certainly will have to take into consideration. But as far as the mess, I think we can do something about that, but yeah, the touchy spot will be to
The
move them.
moving. Okay, good.
And I think, there's a lot we can do short of moving them. Being annoying is okay. That will move along a lot of people. If you're getting a parking ticket every couple of days. Or even a big red sticker on the windshield, that says, please move along.
So,
No, go ahead.
no, I'm sorry.
No, Nikki was saying that there was a map or something, or they started a map from the last council. Do you have anything on that?
I know it was big, and I know it's probably somewhere in there. I think she said she ordered it. I never saw it with my eyes. No, I did see it. It's in her office, probably. So. But
But remember, when we're talking about picking out properties, setting up the whole system and everything like that, that's going to be taken away from.
that's a whole
the
separate
code.
meeting.
Yeah, I
That's a
agree.
whole
Okay.
different meeting, yeah. I'm just saying, you're talking about the needs.
Right.
That's one of the needs is needs to be addressed.
Okay, I can tell you one right off the bat because I hear this all the time. What about the things like barking dogs? That is a big one, or noise complaints. Both of those are actually in our code right now
Mhm.
to be addressed, yet we can't do anything really about it until we get it fixed. So, we have other things too. That's not all of them.
Well, all those things that are plaguing our town are listed in the ordinance. It's just a matter of enforcing it. I think all these things are covered in here. We can go on listing every bad thing about that's going on, but it's just really about enforcement. That's where it comes
Right.
down to.
And kind of one of the things I do want to do, when we get to the point where we're actually come up with something that we want to use, I want to be running scenarios that we can actually cover it. So. Just my thought. All right, so identify problems and needs. Are we going to identify problems with the code itself? I guess we should move into that topic. In the past, the code was set up to where a citizen makes a complaint. And then the next step is the code enforcement officer goes out, inspects and says, yeah, I agree with you, this is wrong. And then the final step was, to a certain extent, there's different scenarios out there. For example, vehicles would be in town and then it would go to the council. And correct me if I'm wrong in getting this right. And then if it wasn't that, the other scenario was simply that we would post and go from there. But all these decisions were made by the council. You know, essentially, when it got to this point, they would, if you impound a vehicle for that person to get his vehicle out, he goes in front of the council and said, what are you talking about, right? If we post, they come in front of the council and says, no, I'm in compliance. But it was always something to where they came to the council. That was on paper, very simple. Of course, one of the problems with that would be it's the council making the decision, a little bit subjective, I think. And in the past couple of years, I haven't seen the council really being too aggressive in regards to code enforcement. But that's the way that it was done before. Then what happened was, came up the idea of, we're going to go to the gold standard. We're going to create a huge, beautiful municipal court, along with all the expense and all the other things that go along with it, and the knowledge and the structure and everything like that. So that's where we stand right now. Literally, we could enforce our codes at this point in time, but impossible. There's no way we can set up a municipal court. There's no money for it or anything like that. So right now, we're stuck in this position where nothing there. You know, we can't do anything. Now, this latest proposal, and we'll get into in depth with it anymore because I'm just explaining it from the way I understand it, is the hearings officer. We don't know too much about this system, you know, and these are the questions for Rick is, how much is it going to cost? How long is it going to take to push somebody through the system? What type of infrastructure is required to use a hearing officer? One of the nice things about a hearing officer is it's this non-biased, hopefully non-biased person sitting up there following the code and the other legal aspects to make sure it's fair and unbiased. So that's kind of the history that I know of Has anybody found anything different in the research that you got? Or have done? Adam?
One understanding I thought I saw here was that the hearing officer doesn't really get involved until it reaches the appeals process. Did I understand that properly? And that at City Hall, they're making the initial determination of, is this a nuisance and does it warrant a letter, does it warrant a fine? And we shouldn't be having to go to a hearing officer step on every single issue. Most citizens will become compliant without ever getting to that point.
That, yes, we always want to shoot for voluntary compliance.
Sure, I'm just saying the issue of a hearing officer doesn't always come into play.
Do you have a comment, Rob? No.
I think with my experience on the council, just the previous city manager, nothing ever got to the point of council hearing anything. So it was just,
It was never the first step of going out and addressing the problem to begin with, whether it be a visit to the person or tagging a vehicle, or it just, that first step was
Oh,
not happening. So
very, very interesting.
the rest
Good- good
will
point.
follow until that.
So it's not just fixing the code, it's a matter of making sure that somebody is out there doing something about it.
That's having the initial step,
Yeah,
initial,
exactly.
you gotta start the procedure. I mean, we have a procedure, a process, but it's just not been, the first step is not.
We also got to make sure that people understand that this is the code and this is the Lakeside standard when it comes to the code. Because if they don't know the code,
Yeah,
That's where
well,
absolutely.
an initial letter is very friendly and nice and educational.
Yes.
And it helps clear that up.
yeah, and actually a copy of the code says, there's your code.
that's, I think that's what Rick has been doing, sending letters.
Send letters, but
But it's more about the fines, that the fine section in here, I think, is what's important for the people who ignore the letters.
Letter number 2.
Well, there's two types of education. There's what's written on the paper, and there's what you learn in reality. So I think they're choosing what you learn in reality. All right, so does that, have we defined what our problems are? I mean, I think that we have a pretty clear understanding of that.
I think we go on and on when it comes to the problems at Lakeside. That if you want to get picky about it, we could go on quite a bit. But there's the major problems I think we should worry about right off the bat.
And I think at this point, we're pretty much in agreement to where the problems are. Which thank you, Tom, for bringing that up about the code officer, because I was skipping that step about how we haven't been doing that. So that actually is aside from just changing the code and saying, hey, we got something else going on, we really need to have that first step taken care of.
In my mind, that's always been the most important part, and the part we should be talking about as soon as possible is like 1, 2, 3, 4. What does that process look like? And then mandating someone to do it.
I believe
No, I just don't get your attention.
Sorry.
Tom's not correct about that. And it was kind of before he got on the council, but we did have a city manager that did go out and address people and talk to them and talk them into complying, and it worked. They spent an awful lot of his time doing that, more than he should have. The letters were sent, visits were made, and most people complied. But then he left, we had a city manager, and she did a little of it, but not much of it. It kind of faded away, but it was trying to work, but it took.
Yeah, no, I'm aware of that. I meant recently.
I'm talking about the days of Andrew.
Yeah.
may I ask a question?
Sure.
Did the fading away period coincide with the change in moving towards a municipal court? I mean, what, there was no,
We felt, at the time we established the municipal court, we passed an ordinance to do that. We thought we had it arranged, and then we kept finding out there were other issues and other requirements, and it just never could get done. And it was mostly a matter of money.
Yeah.
And it didn't straight away, but, in the middle of the manager after Andrew, we did contact the man that would be our municipal judge, and we actually signed a contract with him to do that. But then it turned out we needed an attorney to handle it on our end and a number of other things, and we could just never get it off the ground. So I figured, what? And I think we should be sure we are on solid legal ground, and whatever we do, if we're gonna start finding people, or, we're gonna take serious steps, it's gotta be done legally. So.
Mayor, another thing is, we need money in the budget for abatement for this hearings officer, so that needs to be.
Right.
So I guess one of the questions, and I think I've already posed it to you, is how much will this cost? To have it proper, to cover the issues about being sure that, because it's a massive paperwork type of thing. And like, you're exactly right. I mean, we're gonna need money in the budget to actually be able to spend a fair amount of human resources just on covering the resources. So we should be aware of the cost up front. Whether, and by the way, whether any of these scenarios, it's still gonna cost us money to do that first part, which hasn't been done in a long time. All right, is everybody pretty much in understanding on that? Determine the objective. What do we want to do with this whole process? Do we want to become billionaires for the city? Or do we want to, make a lot of money? Or do we simply want to clean up the town?
Yeah, I agree. But that's an option. But the money would be.
So clean up the town. Past efforts of voluntary enforcement worked with Andrew, but pretty much hasn't worked with anybody else, so.
There's a tremendous amount of things.
He told me that he dedicated 4 hours a week. But I think he did more than that, but he dedicated a minimum of 4 hours a week.
And that's probably not what city managers should do.
That's right.
So how many hours a week would you guys guess that he put in? His 4 hours plus what he really put in.
He probably put 4 hours in while he was on the clock, and then personally, he just did it personally too.
Yeah.
Who knows?
So can we come up with an estimate of 5 or 6 hours?
Besides the time, it was what you could do in the time.
Yeah. And I don't think there was a lot of a paperwork trail on that, was there?
No, that was Harry, he was an efficient there.
One of the things I've always, I guess, more of my background and everything, is documentation is your friend. Because the minute you do something, they're gonna turn around and say, nah, you didn't do that. Oh, on such and such date, we said this. So I think that's a key also. So things to consider as far as a budget, right?
Mhm. I don't have to publish the budget till tomorrow, so
Yeah.
I'm fine.
You might be running back to your office and making a few little changes.
But it's also pressure from the citizens. It's not, you know, it's not just, okay, we have a code enforcer here. It's, the people out there that are talking to the individual. Maybe they think they're doing it right, and maybe they're doing, you know, what they want to do, and they're not cleaning up, but if people get around and start talking to the individuals, not just us or an enforcer, I think that'll be a big help.
But we want to be careful about that.
You're right, but
Depends how they talk to them.
you can still talk to your neighbor or talk to the neighbor down the street.
Well, the way I would like to put it is education goes a long way.
Mhm.
Saying like, hey, did you realize, and I've done this education before, did you realize that digging into the slope is gonna cause our road to come down into the street? And you're gonna have to pay for that. That education seemed to work with the neighbor. But, yeah, I get what you're talking about. Adam?
Everybody knowing that we're gonna have limited resources for code enforcement, I think it's also important for us to establish. In my mind, I feel like, code enforcement starts first with complaint driven, you know what I mean? We're not out looking for problems unless it's real obvious. And then there's also, we have to set priorities, you know what I mean? There are a lot of things that we want to accomplish with code enforcement, and maybe eventually we can. But knowing we have very limited budget, we have to probably focus on health and safety issues more than aesthetics, for instance, you know what I mean? And get the ball rolling. And for this year, when we're not talking about the budget thing, we know what a few priorities are. And if we just focus on that, we can probably make it work.
I have a few issues with the citizen complaint system. It's not necessarily, I think the citizen complaint system should stay there for sure. But I think we need to be a little bit more, don't want to say aggressive, a little bit more proactive, yes. A little bit more proactive in our code enforcement, because there are a lot of things out there that citizens might be afraid to complain. A lot of citizens might do it as a ticky-tack thing. I'm upset with the neighbor,
Mhm.
so I'm gonna complain that his weeds are 2 inches too tall. And I've seen that before, so, you wanna kind of be a little bit careful in regards to just the citizens complaint system.
That falls under number 5, establish priority.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's up to the city manager. I mean, that stuff also has to be documented. He can't just go find someone for something a neighbor said. He has to right? It has to be visible. There's like rules and limitations to that. You can't be opening their gate and looking at their yard.
Well, before I send somebody a letter, I'm gonna wanna see something myself.
Yeah.
But when I talk about that scenario is, hey, yeah, you're right, the grass is too tall. But, we have somebody out there with a bunch of massive lights shining into people's faces with a whole, junkyard maze of everything out there. I think, maybe you consider priorities, which would be the priority, the junkyard.
Yeah, I mean, I would hope Rick would be able to decipher priorities in that sense.
Yeah.
Just,
It's my expectation. First step.
But there's also places that are health hazards that somebody might not complain about.
I have a hard time believing that. I feel like if the public knows that we're listening, they're gonna complain plenty.
You walk down over that way. Like Rick did today or yesterday. Yeah, that's out there, trust me.
But that means he complains about most of these issues.
You don't see complaints, nobody's, well, you do now, but it's still a health hazard. It's still dangerous,
No question. I'm just saying, I trust that the neighbors are the health hazard. we'll show up or send an email and say, hey, can somebody come check this out?
That's when it comes to the safety of the city.
I personally feel like this discussion is kind of getting. I don't know where we're going with any of this.
Right now,
Like,
what we're doing is we're defining, instead of jumping into the solution, we need to know what the problem is. For example, Tom brought up the fact that, hey, there's this other problem right here. So I just want to make sure that when we get to the point of going over the code, that we have a clear understanding of what we're trying to tackle.
I have a concern. I found a much higher degree of expectation in this community of complaints being kept anonymous than I've ever experienced previously in my career. So you want to issue an anonymous complaint. You don't want to leave your name, but you want us to initiate some kind of action to deal with the situation. I am challenged by that personally. I guess I'm just still dealing with the surprise of the level of expectation and past processes here, allowing and perhaps even enabling people to not go on the record, and yet they want a record done in order to have enforcement done. It adds an element of challenge, not that it's one that can't be overcome, but it does sort of tie the hands of the enforcement process. I mean, the English law concept of, knowing your accusers, sort of flies in the face of how democracy was written. But whatever, I mean, it's whatever policy you want to create. But it is a concern that I have as a person in the middle.
I think we've talked about and analyzed alternative names. Are we set with the present system that we have? I mean, aside from the three different scenarios I mentioned, do you want to make a major change to the system? Or do you want to just work on whatever we're going to have that's broken in the system, such as hearing officer versus council versus municipal judge? And that would be alternative names. Are we going to stick with that?
I thought we were going with Rick's version of the ordinance where it says hearing officer, there's a fee schedule, failure to comply. I thought that's the route we were going.
We're just opening up alternatives. Right?
Oh,
Yeah, we haven't
Okay.
decided that. We need to look at everything out there. And just what Rick's proposal is good. I just want to make sure we cover all those bases. Establish priorities. We can hold off on that at this point because we pretty much covered the information up to the code examples. Would everybody agree with me on that? Fine. Okay. So let's look at our alternatives. That's where we're at now. Do you want to talk about present system or the hearing officer system?
well, I think the municipal judge thing is out of the question. Correct?
How's everybody feel about that? That's a good thing.
I don't think there's money for it. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's out.
Okay, good. That's gone.
It coming before the council. It just never got that far a whole lot. I think in hearings officers, perfectly fine. I think there's been issues with everything before that. It's the bigger problem. So we could find a hearings officer who's within reasonable cost. I don't see a problem with that. I think that's probably the best route we have.
I think that's when we talk to Gary Milliman, this hearing officer process. He does this for several cities, Port Orford, Powers, Brookings, Bannon.
Oh, so he was actually a hearings officer, when we decided to go with the court?
No, he was a municipal judge. He wouldn't go out and deliver the
Right.
notices, that kind of thing, when somebody was noticed and had to come to court and decided. that-
Oh, okay.
Then he came here, yes.
Yeah.
And the cost was, at that time, this is, well, it's been a couple of years ago, I guess, has it been that long? It was pretty minimal. He would come, basically, and covered his expenses, and when you had more than one, he would come once a month or on an as-needed basis. And hear these.
Oh, so he actually did this before?
Yeah.
Or was this part of his municipal court thing?
He was just under contract.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, we've already done this. We've
Or
already.
Lakeside?
Like a circuit judge, probably.
Yeah.
Not in other cities, but
Oh.
several other cities. I don't know what he's doing currently.
Yeah, I don't know. That all kind of fell away, but
So how much did it cost?
then it was like
Just a few $100.
$300, I think, for every time he came, I think is what it was.
Wow.
So,
I talked
He-
to
he
him last
says-
year.
he said most of the time through the process, and I think we all realize this, that just the threat of that, people, they don't want to go to court. They'll take care of the problem before they go forward, so.
Well, and it seems to me like this is an easier job for him than for a municipal court judge. A hearings officer, because all you have to know is that we will process.
That's an option to open up that conversation with him again and see, approach that.
It was my understanding that because the municipal courts process wasn't working out for whatever reasons in the past, what Rick was proposing was a move away from a court system to a more administrative process. And that's what this draft code in front of us addresses. So we keep talking about municipal court here. Rick, can you help us understand the difference between what a municipal judge, a municipal court would do and what a hearings officer would do?
I think I would state that the municipal judge and the hearing officer actually do very similar actual tasks. The situation is that when you have a judge who's tied to the court system, there's other elements involved because a judge can do both a fine as well as imprisonment or incarceration. And therefore you have to provide a defense attorney if the other person can't afford one, and you have to have a certain pot of money set aside. And in some places, including perhaps here, you actually have to pay for that person to be put in incarceration and pay daily for that cost as well. The concept of administrative versus a judge allows administrative process, which is purely based upon fines and liens on property, which the city is itself empowered to do.
And that's what we're accomplishing.
And-
Draft before us.
Yes.
Seems like it streamlines the process a lot, and that's what citizens are looking for. Something clear and effective.
And it saves money that the city doesn't have.
And again, I just keep thinking I need to remind myself that we don't, a lot of things are not even gonna get to this point.
Right.
They're gonna be addressed before it. Really, where this comes to play if the person appeals it.
Well, I thought we had decided that we weren't gonna go with the municipal court. Was it, I thought that was my understanding.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Okay. So based on the present discussion, is our way forward is to investigate the hearings officer approach?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
I'm in this. Okay, so everybody's pretty much in agreement with it. Now that we went through all that, now we can start talking about what time is it?
7:20.
Oh, good, got plenty of time to start going over this. And we need to start developing some questions in regards to the municipal or the hearings officer. Somebody will start somewhere. Discussion.
Well, this person agreed with this group,
So my understanding from the code itself is it's a contract.
Correct.
Do they have to have any qualifications or?
You can set whatever you want to set as it relates to expectations when we put up the RFP or however we move forward with it.
So say, for example, I know a guy. That guy can be hearings officer. There's no state regulation or anything like that, right?
I would actually, I'd need to check on that as it relates to, but I would think not.
So, qualifications are necessarily required for this. The draft here says that they have to be under contract.
Yes.
I'm assuming it's there for a purpose. It's just not somebody that you can call in today to do it.
That is a fact.
Okay.
I have a question. The part where it's notice of failure to comply. What is the timeline on something? When you see something, you document it. What are we looking at as far as getting it?
Well, it would depend upon the severity of it. We would create some kind of weighted scale as it relates to a compliant state. If it's an illegal sewer hookup, we'd want to give them a week because they're going to have to get a plumber. If it's an abandoned car that's been there for a year, we would probably give them 15 days. If it's a barking dog issue, 2 or 3 business days. But I would think that we would want to create a scale, both in fines as well as in timeline, as to how much time people have to address the issue based upon the type of issue it is. In some cases, it's going to be repeated offenses. I mean, I got 2 noise complaints going on right now, one on 13th and one on 15th. 4 houses that all have anyway. Failure to comply is when I get the 2nd complaint or 3rd complaint, or in this case, the 5th complaint of repeated obnoxious noise.
So are you saying we need to set up a standard for when you just say, I'm done? And we move it on in the process?
I'm thinking that based upon severity, we set a standard that includes the increasing level of fee as well as fine based over time. Even most cities set up a standard that, if your alarm goes off falsely 5 times within a month, around the 6th time you start getting a fine. And I mean, that's just for a burglar alarm going off or whatever, because they obviously have alarm and they're using city resources to address their situation, which they're going to address. So I'm thinking that there is a standard that includes repeated as well as seriousness.
You probably knew this question was gonna come up. Can you provide us samples from other cities in regards to what they're doing as far as a schedule?
I can, as it relates to especially more fire marshal related stuff and police related stuff, because I've served as a police commissioner in another city. And I've done code enforcement in a couple cities. But you want to take a look at what the kind of incidents are that we're dealing with here.
Well, yeah.
And I think,
scales.
you know, the three biggies is the health nuisance of certain properties to the extreme, the number of abandoned vehicles, the number of RVs that people are living in, and the number of abandoned vehicles.
Yeah. I mean, literally, you could, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you can look down the street, find the telephone pole, anything on this side of the road, if it's an RV, it's in there, that's a problem. That's an RV illegally parked. That's an easy one to start. But is that the priority? It would be in my opinion, but.
Well, the problem, right?
Priority.
I'm sorry. My challenge right now is it is a priority when someone's living in it. It's not a priority when there isn't anybody living in it. And it's tough for someone on bias to make that determination.
And here comes the problem of camping. How can we incorporate this process of code enforcement with the scenario that you just mentioned? People camping in that RV on the street
But they're not camping, they're living there.
or living. But they're violating the law.
That is a fact.
Why can't we enforce our laws?
I believe our current code requires that we can enforce it. We would tag it, we would tow it, we would have to secure it in a secured yard, and the council would have to make a decision on it within 5 days. I think that's our current code.
Yeah. But if there's somebody in it, can we do that?
I'm unclear on that.
I don't think we can. That's where.
We've tried that.
My question is, can we at least do that first step? It says to the public that we're paying attention and we're trying. So if we can get to the point that this is a problem vehicle, we're not trying to move it, but we sure as hell can put a big red tag on the side of it. And it says to the person who owns it and to the public that this is not being ignored. Because right now, that's what I think the public see. They think we just ignore that stuff. And if we can be more outwardly, more obvious in how we looked at that vehicle. In fact, we looked at it 4 times. See those where he scraped off 4 different stickers? You know what I mean? That says to the public and it alleviates some of their concerns that we're just ignoring them.
There's no shortage of violations, no doubt. We just gotta take that first step of addressing it.
It's sitting on the hero putting a tag. You know, those 2 things I think go a long, long way.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you put a tag on somebody's vehicle or an abandoned vehicle, and it usually gets their attention.
Yeah. And we're kind of swaying off the subject right now because we're kind of looking at the code here for hearings officer. What you're talking about is what's already, a lot of what you're talking about already exists, and I don't know that we're going to be going and changing that section of it, of the code, until we get this first part taken care of here. But yeah. So I have some questions about what he did for 93.06, non-enumerating nuisances. He had mentioned 4B2. He says the city manager or city recorder manager shall forward an appeal to municipal court. Is that just a typo?
Are you on page 4?
I am on page 4, correct.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll check.
Yeah. Just check on.
I had a question about in the definition section.
Okay.
Under nuisances, B is listed as offense decency. And it was hard for me as I was reading through this that who determines and how you determine decency. It seems like something that's hard to put a nail on. So I wonder if that was even necessary to do.
Where you at, Adam? What page?
Page 2 at the top, nuisance. So you have A through F, it looks like, E. And I just, I found it seemed like that was pretty subjective to opinion as opposed to something that we could really.
Well, if I may, I would hope that everyone has a certain level of public decency, you know, like, I think there's an understanding if you don't go to the bathroom on the sidewalk.
No, I
Or,
get
you
that.
know, like, yeah, so,
On some things, it's real clear. On other things, it may not be as clear.
yeah,
But I don't think you'd want to take it out.
yeah.
You know, you gotta cover that.
I feel like the leaves room for an argument. You know, we could sit here and say that we all agree that decent is here. And then you
Yes.
have another person going,
And that's the point behind the hearings officer.
that was just
Neutral person.
one definition I had a question on.
Okay. Are these time frames in this code are the same as the old code? Looks like 45 days plus 30 days.
What page?
This was just a general comment I threw in there about getting to a final judgment.
What page is that on?
I would have to go back and look at the current one.
Yeah, because I'm looking at determination shall be issued within 30 days of the hearing. So the hearings officer has 30 days to make his determination. You know, I'm not quite sure where I got 45 days. Okay, and then appeals of an order to abate shall be heard by the Lakeside hearings official. Okay, so never mind. I added instead of, should have done an order. Okay. That kind of looks like similar. Never mind.
Can I ask a question? Do you know of companies or individuals that do the hearing officer job on a contract basis? And do it, can you tell us what the charge, or can you find out?
The city of Monroe pays $250. No, I think it got bumped to $3. $3 comes every other month. You know the date out there, and the people that are scheduled to appear are more fearful of the date than they are of anything else. And things tend to get fixed, but I think the Monroe contract is 300 6 times a year. So it comes every other month. We set the date.
Oh my God.
And it's all about having to appear when things suddenly either fix or get emptied. And
If the person doesn't have to have any qualifications, can't someone volunteer to be hearings officer for free?
yes, no, because
No.
it needs the person needs to fall underneath the city's insurance.
Get them like $10
I think some remuneration is required in order to make that connection.
Okay,
As long as
What
it's
is-
under a con.
But it could be one of those,
Yes.
yeah, it could be one of those cookies that you got that nobody else got.
So if I'm hearing this correctly, the expense for a hearing officer is minimal. What expenses are we missing there? The person itself doesn't sound like that costs that much money at all,
The expense is the documentation.
which is still a city function anyway.
It is, but it's not one that we've been spending thousands of dollars on.
I know.
No, the expense is the setup to get to the hearing. Taking the pictures,
Uh,
verifying the information, keeping the files, making the repeated contacts, paying for the green slip you put on the mail to get certified. No, the expense is the administrative staff time in doing it and the paperwork and the bright orange stickers.
Oh, okay.
We don't have adequate weathering products to post things either on a stick in the yard or on a door. We don't have, we don't even put plastic over the stickers that we put on RV units and stuff. There's just equipment and resources and, quite honestly, I think the biggest expense is the fact that I'm going to be asking for a city clerk position that I'm budgeting 25% for code enforcement time and use and 25% of one person. That's going to be the biggest expense.
in the abatement, we got that far.
The abatement, if we got that far, in other words, the city goes out and cleans it ourselves, puts a lien on the property. Though we've had a couple fine citizens volunteer in that particular arena, including one that owns a construction company. But and I can't name names at this time. I'm sorry, I need a consultant. But yeah, if we have to go out and clean it and deal with it ourselves, then that's an expense.
Yeah, and we can recoup our costs.
Well, you can, but typically the recuperation is when they sell the property, they lose the property based upon, and we don't recoup if they get foreclosed on because we aren't in first standing to the taxman.
Alan, I'm sorry.
I'm not.
Gotta look at the angle here.
Another question, one of the things you ran into in the municipal judge concept is an appeal process. Somebody does not agree with the decision, so what's the difference with a hearings officer?
A hearing officer process requires the other party to pay the cost to go through the appeal process if they want to take it to circuit court. So my understanding is that the cost of the appeal process is encumbered on the other party instead of the court process where it is not.
Does any of the councils have other questions at this point? No. Right, next steps.
Can we, get the committee going? Can we have citizens come in and apply to be part of the committee?
As of today,
Okay,
send them to mayor@cityoflakeside.org.
what council members will be on?
Haven't decided yet. Do you want to decide that now? Discuss it. Well, why don't I check?
We've got one already.
Oh, there, did you want to do it? Well, would you be willing to take on that task? Okay, we got our counselors. That was easy. When do we want to, well, so I'm assuming you guys are okay with ratifying my livability committee. Okay. Yeah. Good.
You need to post that somewhere publicly that they're looking
Yeah.
for some.
Yeah, we'll let Rick do that. I want to get in quite a few people to go over everybody and kind of mix diverse opinions so we can have it running solid. Now, this would be an advisory committee based on that description, right?
Yes.
So that would require that,
Public meeting law, the meetings will be open, they'll be public, there'll be agenda, there'll be minutes.
excellent. Staffing. Would we, well, you. Just, it's not much of a staff I'm looking at here. Okay.
Thanks a lot.
No, I mean, I know you're Superman, but
The five would come to a vote of the council then to appoint them to that committee or how would that
no,
work?
that's mayor's.
Okay.
According to the, well, we could do a ratification at that point, but it's a ratification of the whole committee. And I can check to make sure that that's the process. I'll make sure we get.
For the applications, do you want to use the standard board and commission application that we have
Yes.
used in the past? And I believe is available on the city's website. If not, I can make it there.
Yes. Give me a chance to clean up my verbiage and I'll send you over a more formalized committee thing there. All you Facebook fanatics, get the word out. Get the word out about this committee. So, we can get a lot of people in to do it.
We're looking for 5 people at least, correct?
Yeah. So the reason I say 5 is because that's 5 plus 2, that's a committee of 7. Anytime you really get above 7 people on a committee, it becomes unmanageable. If you've ever had to sit in a meeting of more than 7 people, especially 10, it's like hell. Excuse my English.
I'll remind you, Mr. Mayor, that a week from tonight, we have a budget committee meeting
Yeah.
of 14 people.
Absolutely. See my point? All right, great. So does Rick have his marching orders for information?
Are we all in it? Is everyone? The ordinance that we were going over. Are we gonna put that on the next meeting? The agenda? Pass it? Okay.
There are, we're not done with it.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much space do we have on the meeting on the 9th. I think, it's gonna be, the code enforcement thing is gonna be on the schedule until the end. So we can always allot time to do it. Like I said, this is #1 priority.
I agree, it's #1 priority for most of Lakeside. If we start talking to people,
Yeah.
we want to do this.
Absolutely. We want to get it done before neighbors start, taking machetes to each other.
Probably too late.
Could be. So the answer to that, Nikki, will be on next, the 9th agenda. And we'll even discuss it probably during the budget committee, as far as money is allocated and that type of thing. Okay, good. Now, I still do want to run through a full process of how the whole code enforcement system will work. Just do it a sample of one of them, so everybody has a clear understanding, you know, when this is put in place, what actually happens. Great. Well, I'm excited about, you know, that we're finally doing something about this. Maybe 2-3 years too late, but hey, better late than never. I'm really excited about the visibility committee. I'll actually, you know, still be in the committee, you know, helping to facilitate and stuff like that, so it's actually neat, but I got no more questions or comments. Would anybody else like to comment on code enforcement?
In code enforcement for the scrap,
Both.
because I do have additional comments.
Yes, let's continue with that. I thought we were done with the comments on the draft.
I hadn't really sensed an opening for it.
You have your opening. Let's go over them.
Okay, I guess let's start at the beginning. Title gives us the hints of potential problem. It's in chapter 93.
I'm sorry, Counselor, could you use your mic, please? Thank you.
Is that better? Okay. So it's amending chapter 93 and 155. And the city attorney in his memo had also indicated that it would be a good idea to also amend chapter 154. And the reason for this is the draft in front of us is setting up a schedule of fines and fees for violations. And chapters 154 and 155 have their own penalty sections that set out a flat rate for violation. And the objective was to unify those three sections. And so the question is, do you want to just apply this fee schedule or fine schedule to violations of code sections that don't have their own penalties, or do you want to unify them? If you want to unify them, then we have to add to this ordinance an item that repeals the penalty section of chapter 154, which is missing. And then this draft calls for a repeal of the penalty section from chapter 155. Because 155 is the land use code, you can't just amend it by ordinance. It has to go through the planning commission first. There has to be notice to the state. It's an involved process.
Yeah.
Remind us all what 154.
154 is the code chapter that deals with division of land. So subdivisions, partitions, lot line adjustments, things of that sort.
Which is probably when it was done with the municipal court. He didn't put it in there. So the question would be, do we not allow a unified fees in for 155 and 154 and leave them as are and not reference to them?
Or do we set it as a priority for the planning commission and ask them to?
It's still
Help us out.
super long.
Yeah, even if the planning commission was totally on board with it and jumped on it right away, it would still take a few months.
Yeah, at least
That change.
So maybe, would you suggest at this point that we do this addressing on chapter 93 and put 155 and 154 to a future discussion?
Well, Rick can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but you could leave the repeal of 155 in this ordinance recognizing that that's not the legal process for doing it, and then go ahead and do it correctly afterwards.
That would be my suggestion.
And then so if you did want to have the unified fines, which is a great idea, we would need to add to this draft a section repealing section 8.400 of ordinance 95-194. It had to be changed anyway because it called for imprisonment. Page 4. Section 4, which is 93.07B appeal procedure. On item number 2, it's setting out the basis for an appeal to the hearings officer. Says a person responsible for testing that no nuisance exists shall file a written appeal. And I think we should expand that to also include appeal on the basis that they are not a bona fide responsible party. Because you could appeal based on the fact that you say, hey, I'm in compliance, no nuisance exists. But you should also be able to appeal on the basis that I'm not the right person.
So, so this person responsible definition wouldn't necessarily cover everybody in that case.
That's not what I'm getting at. What I'm saying is a person could receive a notice of violation. And in that case, someone on city staff has already verified that that person is a responsible party. But they may disagree with that, and that would be the basis of their appeal. For example, someone gets a notice because they're the owner of record on the county assessor's website,
Right,
but they've actually sold the property. It's not them anymore.
right.
They should still be able to appeal on that basis.
Yeah. On page 5. The section, the items there are renumbered, 6 and then 7 and then 7 again and then 8. So the 7 needs to be 8 and the 8 needs to be 9.
We're on page 5 at the very top. We got two numbers. Page 5 at the very top, we got two number 7s. Somebody's lucky number.
So it should go 7, 8.
Yeah, I got,
Let's go to the next
got
document.
yours, or like the final draft looking one.
But
Mine's,
I'm
mine's
not
right.
looking at
Mine.
the clean copy, I'm looking at the markup copy.
Oh,
Shows
okay.
the
Yeah,
changes.
Yeah,
mine's
okay,
the
so
29.
he cleaned that one up. Okay.
On what would be number 9, it starts with a tape recording shall be made of the hearing. And we might want to change that to an audio recording, so that we're not specifying particular medium. And it says the tape shall be retained for at least 90 days. And I'm wondering if 90 days is long enough in case that person then goes to the municipal court on a second appeal, and you still need to have the recording as evidence.
Yep.
And after 90 days, it would be gone. But I don't know how much trouble it would be to bump that all the way up to something like a year.
In a modern day, that's not.
Right.
Yeah, possible ends, it would be.
It's electronic anyway. Costs nothing to store it. page 10. Actually, it starts at the bottom of page 9, then continues to 10. There's a section defining a term called G, which is the immediacy and magnitude of the failure to comply. And then it describes different levels of failure to comply and bumps up fines accordingly, which is a great idea. But it's not clear in the draft whether failure to comply penalties would apply while a person is going through the appeals process. And we should consider having something in there where you're not bumping up fines for failure to comply during the time period while the person's seeking an appeal.
Who sets the time for the appeal? Obviously, the city does.
But the
But,
person requests a hearing,
right,
and then the hearing gets scheduled, and then the hearing gets held, and then sometime after the hearings officer makes a finding.
right.
So while all that's going on, it's an
That's true
indeterminate
within
period.
the hearing schedule, but I'm thinking some guy goes, oh, well, yeah, I'll take care of it. Go, okay,
That's different. He hasn't filed for an appeal.
okay.
So something.
Yeah, that would make sense. Then.
Once an appeal is filed, so the clock stops.
Stops until the appeals process is closed. I think that's all I have.
Nice. That would have been a good job. Which brings up another thing. Can somebody put this in like a table? So people, at least when we get to that point, so people can very easily run this crazy calculation. I mean, it's like, well, if it's P, add 1 for this, add 2 for this, and this is more of something when you get to that point. This is kind of the point that Aaron had mentioned. And we don't want to, because the whole point of my understanding of the whole point about this fee schedule and system is simply, we want to take the subjectivity out of it. By doing this, it's a way of eliminating a lot of the subjectivity, therefore it's a fairer, cleaner method of doing it. A lot to comprehend for most people.
I wonder if this is already too complicated, if we shouldn't do that. Is it necessarily this complicated, or is it something we can narrow down in a couple bullet points?
If we want to remove subjectivity, I think we need to do something like this. Because otherwise, well,
The ultimate removal of subjectivity is what we have now. Flat rate of X dollars per violation per day. There's no subjectivity in that. It's just a question of, isn't there a violation? The reason for having a variable fine schedule like this is it adds additional financial penalties for people who are uncooperative and serial violators.
which is the people we want to make sure understand what we're talking about when we're talking about creating enforcement. That is, understand their consequences of what they're doing.
But it's possible that you might want to try just going with flat rate fine like we currently have, and then actually applying it, collecting it from people, and see if that works.
Imagine that, right?
Do you even need something this time? But then if it doesn't work out, then maybe you go back and remodel it.
Good point.
$200 a day is pretty motivating.
Yeah, and this goes up to $2,000 a day. Which is,
Even more motivating.
At that point, though, you're never gonna get that money from someone. being realistic.
So this one might be a good one for everybody to think about. I don't know that we can make a quick decision on that. As whether we want to go with a flat fee or this. Or is everybody's minds made up on that one? Let's think about that one a little bit. Because that's a low simplicity. But I also want to make sure that we're getting to the people who we got at.
Well,
Let's think about it.
there's a big difference between a nuisance of a dog barking and a nuisance of somebody parking on Main Street, peeing on the street. So, I mean, if you put a flat rate on it,
Can we do something like, $200 a day? And then if you don't comply in a week, then it doubles, or, if you don't comply in a month, then it triples or something, this kind of.
Sure, or if you've done it before.
Yeah,
yeah,
Escalating scale, you're on level.
So
something a little bit simpler.
what I'm hearing is we want to go simpler than this. Am I correct? No?
I'll have a conversation with legal counsel about how we can make the formula, if there's an option to make this formula simple.
Yeah.
And bring it back to you.
It might be one of those things about like the municipal court. This might be good for Eugene, but for Lakeside, we might. And
I believe the meat of this came from Yonkola.
That a city?
Yes. My sister would be offended by that.
Okay,
And I think it's important to keep in mind when we're talking about fines and stuff, it's really important to keep in mind that our goal is compliance.
I agree. What I'm hoping for is that the livability committee will be a huge help in making sure that everybody understands what's going on. And we don't have to use the hammer as much as something else. Any more review of the nuisance code? Or we'll call it a nuisance code.
draft.
The draft, yes, there we go. I think we've covered the committee that I need to get going on. And we also have given Rick sufficient homework. Okay. Good. So excellent discussion. I'm going to go ahead and close the discussion on code enforcement at this point in time. We provided additional direction to the city manager and code enforcement. Adjournment is at 8:03. Next meeting is May 9th. Regular council meeting, public comments, and all that good stuff. Thank you. Thank you.